Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are going to be talking about the Utah Jazz, a team that has not really gotten a crazy amount of attention this season, and for pretty good reason. They are not the most competitive of teams right now, currently struggling to crack the top 10 in the Western Conference. So, they're not exactly a team that most people would say is on the rise. The reason why we're talking about them, though, is because there was a period in this season where that did not appear to be the case. If you take a look at the stretch of games from mid-December to mid-January or so, the Jazz had a stretch where they went 13-4, and it sort of looked like the team was angling to compete for a play-in spot, that the sort of pieces were coming together for them, and that they were looking to sort of make that push. And now, coming up on the All-Star break, a lot of that momentum has dissipated, so to speak. So the question is, what happened for the Jazz, right? Because there's a lot of things, if you look at their roster and the way the first half of their season has gone, there's a lot of things that appear to be working in their favor. They just don't have the results to reflect that. So in terms of what's been going well for the Jazz this season, first and foremost, their star player, Lauri Markkanen, has continued to play at a very high level. 23.7 points, 8.5 rebounds, 1.9 assists. All of those numbers are around where they were last season when he won Most Improved Player. His field goal percentage is at 50.1. His three-point percentage cracked the 40% mark at 40.6. So the best player you've got on your team continues to put up relatively similar numbers to what he had last year. That's a fantastic start for the Jazz. On top of that, the John Collins trade seems to have worked out okay. They got Collins for incredibly cheap in the offseason. He's averaging 14.4 points and 8.1 rebounds on 52.2% shooting. All three of those stats higher than what he was putting up in his final season in Atlanta. Not quite as high as his sort of career bests, but better production than he was putting up for the Hawks. In the meantime, you've got a pair of relatively young guards in Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, who are both contributing on a semi-consistent basis, let's say. They're both averaging around 17 points and somewhere between 4 and 5 assists. So we haven't really seen a situation here where one of the two has become the definitive sort of floor general for the Jazz, but they're both finding ways to both score points and sort of run the offense when needed. And then you look at some of the younger players on their team: Walker Kessler in his second season, Keontae George in his first. They're looking pretty good, right? They're combining for about 19 points per game. Kessler is pulling in 7.5 rebounds per game. George is averaging 4.2 assists. And both of these guys have been relatively healthy, right? They haven't played every single game, obviously, but they've missed single digits so far for each of them. So the star player, Markkanen, continues to play well. The big man that you got for some pocket lint in the offseason in Collins is putting up better numbers than he was on his previous team. Sexton and Clarkson are both contributing pretty consistently, and your young guys are integrating themselves into your team at a pretty rapid pace, right? So now you look at the statistics for the Jazz. They're 11th in the league in points per game. They're 2nd in the league in rebounding. They're 7th in assists. And all of this paints the picture of a team that should not be several games under 500 and struggling to crack the top 10. So what's the problem? Why is Utah so low in the standings? And the reason is because everything I just pointed out is technically true, but it's also kind of masking the big problem here for Utah. We'll start with that offense because that is what I was kind of focusing on before. Yeah, those numbers look good. 11th in points, 2nd in rebounds, 7th in assists. But when you take a look at the wider offense, when you take a look at their shooting percentages, you realize just how inefficient this team truly is. They are 19th in the league in field goal percentage, despite being 8th in the league in field goal attempts per game, they're 24th in the league in 3-point percentage while being 10th in 3-point attempts per game. So this team's taking a lot of shots, but they're not hitting at the percentage that would really take their offense to the next level. They're 11th in points because they are just getting up so many shots that they're kind of putting up points by volume, right? Not the most efficient team in the world. They don't really take care of the ball that well either. They're last in the league in terms of turnovers. So you're shooting low percentages. You turn the ball over more than really any other team in the league. That's not fantastic for the offensive end. And then, well, you look at the other half of the ball, right? If the offense is inefficient and has to score by volume, then you need to hope that your defense is strong enough to hold the opposing team at arm's length and get your offense multiple possessions to facilitate a high volume sort of shooting style. That's not happening either. The defense for Utah is 25th in the league by pure defensive rating. They're 24th in the league in terms of points allowed. They are 28th in the league in terms of three-pointers allowed, and 25th in the league in terms of general field goals against. So the defense is not stopping anyone. They're playing a style kind of similar to what we were seeing from maybe teams like the Pacers, where the defense is extremely secondary in terms of the priorities, and the hope is that your offense can just be so strong that that doesn't matter. The problem is that the Pacers, maybe pre-Halliburton injury, because that's kind of messed with them a little bit, were one of the most efficient offenses in the league as well. They were a very dangerous team. They shot the three ball extremely well. The Jazz don't have that. They're trying to go for a similar pace, but they're so unbelievably inefficient that that pace most often does more harm than good for them. So that's the reason why the Jazz are sort of so far behind here, despite having a lot of things on their roster that at first glance appear to be strengths and improvements for them. So you've got a team that's improving, but they're not quite where they want to be. They're on the outside of the bubble right now, and they want to take that next step forward. You would have thought that the trade deadline would be the perfect time for the Jazz to decide one way or the other. Are we going for it? Are we going to make a big trade and try to improve? Or are they going to sell? Are they going to move players? Are they going to be sort of quiet at the trade deadline and not really do much? And it was more of the latter than the former. Now, they didn't just give up entirely. They didn't trade away key pieces, but they also pretty definitively did not make moves designed to upgrade their roster. They lost Fontecchio, Agbaji, and Olynyk at the trade deadline. Three guys who aren't big scorers, right? Those three players combined averaged like 22 points per game or something like that. But they were significant parts of the rotation. Fontecchio and Olynyk were playing like 21 or 22 minutes per game. Agbaji was the low man, but he was still playing 19.7 minutes per game. So these are guys who were, again, significant parts of your rotation. Even if they didn't factor into the offense, they ate some minutes. They bought time for the starters to rest. Now, what the Jazz brought in these trades at the trade deadline, not fantastic. Kira Lewis Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and Kevin Knox are the three players who can immediately play for the team. They did also get some other stuff. They got the draft rights to Gabriel Procida. They got a first-round pick and a second-round pick. But again, that's for the future, right? In terms of what was added to the roster right now, it's Lewis, it's Porter, it's Knox. And those three guys, I think in the best-case scenario, only match the production of what you lost in these trades. I don't feel like these moves and these guys that they brought in improved the roster. Kind of felt like a lot of a lateral move for the Jazz here, which is a problem when we talk about the fact that the Jazz are sort of spinning their wheels a little bit, right? The roster is improving, but not enough to get them into that top 10. And then at the trade deadline, they make moves that don't appear to have made them any better. So long story short, it does feel like a lot is improving for Utah. The team is taking some steps forward, but the team, the organization, the front office, whatever what have you, maybe doesn't feel like it's enough to justify pushing right now. That the improvements are there, but not as significant as they might have been hoping for. So the best case scenario from their perspective is to wait it out, see what's available in the off season, see if you get further improvement from this roster heading into the next campaign, and really just kind of ride out the second half of the season with what they currently have, which could still work out, right? It basically feels like the Jazz's opinion is, if the team makes it to the play-in or the playoffs outright, unlikely but possible, then great, right? They'll be happy with that. They'll make a postseason appearance and they'll see how far they can go. But there doesn't appear to be any further effort from the Jazz organization right now to get there this season. Feels like the Jazz have basically just consigned themselves to letting this current version of the roster play it out and see where that goes, and sort of hold their cards close to their chest and maybe save up ammunition for the next, 1 to 3 seasons instead. So is that a more prudent decision? Probably, because again, this Jazz team has a lot of problems in terms of their offensive efficiency and their defense. I don't know if there was 1 or 2 guys that you could have brought in to immediately fix all of those problems. And if there is a guy out there, as we sort of mentioned before, or was a guy out there because trade deadline's passed, the cost of acquiring that player would have been maybe so high that it might have hamstrung the Jazz in other places. So they decided to go conservative, but conservative means that this Jazz roster, as constructed, is effectively on its own. No reinforcements are coming. There's going to be no further help. The Jazz need to turn it around just by virtue of their own play and their own coaching staff, or they're going to end up just missing the playoffs and waiting for next season. So, I mean, it's where the Jazz sort of have been the whole season. So this isn't like any sort of massive system shock for them. It's just a little disappointing because at the start of the season, I looked at the Jazz and I saw them as a team that could potentially be on the rise. They are improving, but not fast enough or significantly enough to feel like they wanted to make any moves happen. But that's just my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what you think. Did you have higher expectations for the Jazz this season? Is the position they're in now maybe where you just thought they were going to be, right? Sort of on the lower edge of that bubble and maybe outside of the playoff picture. If there was a move to be made that they didn't, what do you think that was? How much production do you think they're going to get out of some of these guys, right? Kira Lewis Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and Kevin Knox. Am I undervaluing them, perhaps, right? Could they contribute more to the Jazz than I'm giving them credit for? But whatever your opinion, please feel free to share it. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.